Andy, I have something to share with you. It's not my body. I'm saving my V-card for true love. It's this.
If you like to watch Survivor, and when the show ends, you really want to talk about it with like-minded friends. It might be hard to find some, but don't you shed a tear. Check out the Purrrrple Rock podcast, and this is what you'll hear. John will make some dumb jokes, Andy likes to yell and curse, and if they're not available, the backup hosts are so much worse. We'll spend the whole time being jerks and telling you you're wrong. So we found a nice person to sing you our theme song. It's the Purrrrple Rock Survivor podcast.
It's the Purrrrple Rock Survivor podcast. That might be the best song ever.
Yes. That, what you just did, illustrates why you pay talent to be the talent.
I mean, as long as you're not paying them very much, but yeah, sure.
I should clarify, that was at Abigail Klein Music on Instagram. If you want to check out her other stuff, she's very good, very talented, deserving of our money, because good content creators deserve your money, Andy.
Who are you trolling right now?
I mean, pretty much all of us.
Question. Why do I ask questions to which I know the answer?
Yeah.
Oh man, are you psyched? This is the season of like new beginnings. We got wooden heads. We got theme songs. Season 39, what everybody's been waiting for.
Yes, the one that we've just been anxious for all summer. I mean, really, I was, but only because I had been sitting on these fucking things for like 2 months.
It was so weird to see you like all excited and enthused about putting effort towards this product that we have. It's like, where'd this guy come from?
I know. Yeah. Body snatcher situation. All right. Before we get into the actual discussion of the show, quick formality time. I'm John. This is my co-host, Andy. For those of you that are inexplicably tuning into our podcast for the very first time, why? And welcome.
Because they're on the season, John. That's the reason why.
Oh, that's true. That explains 20 of you. But usual disclaimers, we don't know these people we're talking about. We're going to criticize what we see on the show, blah, blah, blah. We might have some profanity, which I think already slipped. Oops. That's it. I don't remember if there's any other disclaimers we usually give.
No, I mean, I think the rest are in the song there.
Yeah, you pretty much should have gotten the essence of the show from that. And if you're still here, that's your own fault.
It's a new season, though. How hyped are you for the actual season now that we've gotten the pictures and the song out of the way?
I mean, based on that first episode, like, kind of hyped. I feel like we got like a legit talent pool here. We got a decent sense of who at least most of them are. Like, the long premiere thing really is, that's where it's at. Like, it helps me to, like, get enough of a sense of a cast that I know who I'm going to want to ignore later on in the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's important is to make all of your judgments in the first episode. So I'm glad we got that 90 minutes, because if you like don't have like an absolute favorite like right away, then the wisest course of action is to spend all your time complaining about it. But yeah, no, I'm excited. Honestly, I find like the off season really helps. By the time this came around, I'm like, yeah, I'm ready for some Survivor. I'm ready for, the giant wooden statues, and they did not let me down. And yeah, I thought this was a really strong premiere.
Yeah, and I think it really did. Same thing. Like, I went in totally cold, didn't do the preseason press, despite the fact that there are very talented people that create that preseason press. And it works, man. I'm telling you, like, I enjoy the preseason press too, but it's also nice to just go in and make the opinions of what you actually see on the show instead of some pregame videos.
Yeah, instead of the headcanon you're creating. And yeah, I think, like, as you spoke to, the 90 minutes helped. For people that keep saying, why don't they do this all the time? It's like, they would if they could. They are not the boss programmers of CBS. They kind of have to work under different masters. And, if everybody else is saying that this is the way it should always be, every episode should be 90 minutes. stop trying to invent a format that doesn't exist in the world that exists. That's not how it works. These things have schedules and formats, and advertisers buy for certain things. And I want you to name me the last 90-minute show you've heard of, because that airs on network television.
Oh, see, I bet someone's going to chime in with like Australian Survivor. Like, they seem like the type of show that would do that. Like 7 episodes a week, 90 minutes each.
No, sure. If you're a country that really doesn't have much programming either, how much do you need? It was just going to be, Vegemite infomercials or something. I don't think we have a lot of Australian listeners, so we can just go in on them.
Like, both of them are so upset right now, though.
Well, they will be 2 days from now when they get to this. Maybe the American Idol results show. I don't know. But anyway, it's not a thing, so we don't need to talk about that. But for what we got, I felt like we didn't get to know everybody, but we got to know enough of the people that I get a sense I feel like we could be in good hands here. I feel like this is a cast that could do good things, be interesting television, and, overcome what might be a silly, stupid gimmick.
Yeah, and I think even the gimmick from what we saw in this episode, it can be applied well. I'm not saying this was a perfect execution of it. I'm just saying, there's some potential there if they do the right things with it, if they don't go too hard with it, if they, work an angle every time. We'll get to the whole gimmick thing later, but there's potential there. I'm not going to shit all over it already. I'll leave my mind open to this.
Yeah, I find in the first episode gimmicks are always kind of fine. Even in first episode of this person didn't go home, last season, it was interesting. Reem's reaction was interesting, and that whole scene with Reem going was interesting. So it usually takes a while for these to, materialize, whether they are good or bad. In large part because the big risk of the gimmick that we have this season is that it will be this massive time suck that adds little value. Well, when you're first introducing it and we're first seeing, Rob and Sandra and all of that, it's not going to feel like that. And again, the 90 minutes. And I think what really helped with the 90 minutes, and I'm skipping a bit ahead here, but they cut Probst time.
Yeah, they started the season without him. But, I mean, his usual role in the opening minutes of the premiere is to hammer hard on that gimmick and, force the theme of the season down your throat. And he wasn't there to do this, partly, at least I'm assuming, because why would you? The theme is supposed to be mysterious. Mm-hmm. So he checked out for the first half hour of the show. I think it was the first time we saw him was the challenge, right?
Yeah, I think that might even been longer than half an hour. Yeah, and I do think that's a good point that, usually be and this is what the Island of the Idols is, but he doesn't want people to know that. They want that a secret. But I felt it was just refreshing instead of Probst, giving a similar spiel that he does and, the same, you there, big guy, you there, old lady. And then the strained, analogies that he has, which, I mean, we've come to enjoy in an ironic way, but I didn't miss it. I was instead of all of that and it's probably about 4 minutes of showtime because usually it's the preview they send to us a couple days before the premiere starts. We just kind of get into meeting these people. Interestingly for them, though, they were kind of hey, where's my Probst introduction? What kind of low budget Survivor ass stuff is this?
Yeah, I mean, it made me happy to think that our beloved regressive father, Jeff Probst, was just hanging out back at the hotel, getting some deep tissue massage in his luxury Fijian hotel room, just chilling while the actual people are roughing it in the game. Just sort of like the same thing that Rob and Sandra got going, where we're supposed to assume that they're actually roughing it. Nah, I don't believe it.
That's what the preseason press that you didn't read. They're oh, we really did it. We were out there building the shelter and fishing and all that.
Sure.
I mean, maybe a bit.
Yeah.
But
I have no doubt that they fished before they went back to their hotel room.
Yeah, but frankly, it'd be a little, why? We're only going to see you for a few minutes. You can helicopter in for this. Just don't shave or something and nobody will know. So yeah, no, I think that really helped us get to know these people, especially because there's going to be extended segments and introductions to other speakers. But yeah, I liked seeing them just really start to form things themselves because frankly, the marooning at this point has been done a lot. And I don't know if there's a lot more, revelations to be taken from those segments. They feel kind of rote.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to innovate an opening for a season 39 seasons in. So I'm fine with this. Try new things, do whatever. But more importantly, this cast, you mentioned that, you saw some bright spots in here. Did anyone in particular stand out to you? Because as you noted, it's incredibly important to pick your favorites right now.
Yeah, and if you don't have one, it's complete garbage, worst season ever. Look, I know some people think that I'm just like a curmudgeon, or I just like seek to have different opinions than everybody, but no, I'm no like made of stone. Of course, Elaine was amazing and I love her.
She is unquestionably the breakout star of that episode, and hopefully of the season. I feel like she could have legs, man. It is, I think we sort of had this same thing with Donathan a couple seasons ago where we're like, hey man, that is not really a type we've seen. Same thing here. Like Elaine, the like Southern butch lesbian who's also a factory worker and is super charming. Haven't had a lot of those in the 39 seasons that we've had. She stands out, man. She's definitely charming. I feel like other people there loved her as much as we did in the audience. Good sign this early.
Yeah, no, she just felt like a breath of fresh air, in large part because of what you're saying. She feels new, and that's hard to do,
Yes.
39 seasons in. Maybe different traits, people compare thisness or brassiness to this, or, this type to that. But, body together, along with just like she's legit funny in what we've seen in the different, not just like to us, but like with people.
Yep.
It seems like an easy wit. She was also made pretty human in this episode. We got to see a lot of vulnerability, and not in an overly maudlin way, but in like a real way. And, those are the fun, connections of why we're watching reality television versus scripted television, that we're watching, people rather than performers, because they can be characters, and we love characters, especially on this show. We love characters, but I think we can really connect to them when they, there's also some element of their humanity, unless their characters are just so great that we don't care how human they are. But with Elaine, we got it all.
Yes, we got the full range, which was nice. I mean, I'm rooting for her early for a lot of reasons, not the least of which being that she is that something that feels original, but also because, there was that touch of humanity there. It's like, hey, you're an actual human being, even though for the purposes of this podcast, I will probably treat you as a one-dimensional character. You are an actual human. It's a nice reminder.
Yeah, well, I mean, also, like, the touches of humanity is always just like a side that we see, and what, the editors decide to show us, and some people don't get that. That's why, yes, the foundational element of this podcast is we speak of you as television characters more than we speak of you as people, because to presume that we would know what kind of people you are is the height of arrogance. It's a level of arrogance even I refuse to reach. But, we were watching the television show, and we can base opinions however ill-informed on those things.
Yeah.
So besides Elaine, did anybody else stand out?
I feel like a whole lot of the women on this cast got fleshed out pretty early.
Phrasing.
We had old lady Janet doing things like she's not just the first boot old lady that we're not going to ever remember. She's got some skills. People seem to kind of like her. She didn't seem to be totally in danger right away, which is rare for an older woman.
Yeah, I really like Janet, and there was something about her that was different that I wanted to talk about really quickly. And so we get to see her, make the fire really quickly. We get to see her step up and then challenge. And that's what I liked, is that she knew that her type, no matter who she is, initial impressions and the stereotyping that goes involved, especially in early decision making, they were, people want to just say, okay, that's a frail person who is worthless to us. And instead of just like hanging back and hoping like, maybe not me, maybe I don't go to tribal council, maybe it'd be somebody else. She's like, no, I'm not going to be that. I am going to put myself out there, and frankly, and the risks that entail from being out there, and prove to these people, no, you will not see me that way. So it was a really proactive way of combating what will be her biggest challenge of advancing in the early part of the game. And I was really impressed by that.
Yeah, and it plays right into something we've discussed a lot on this podcast, which is take the risk,
Yeah.
especially for her, as you said, her archetype is super vulnerable really early. So, I mean, knowing that, the odds are heavily in favor of you getting voted out. Roll the dice right away, because what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to get voted out really early. That would have happened anyway.
Yeah, and then I feel like there's been some types that have tried to step out, like, I'm not the old lady, I'm these other things, but they actually kind of sucked and only reinforced these things. But not her. She was, starting fire like she's, Boston Rob. We'll get to that in a little bit. And yeah, like, she's like the challenge, marker, the one person standing out. I'm going to do this thing. That's a spot that, like, people who are really good at these things try to sometimes, like, I don't want to be that person in the first challenge. But she knows, it's like, I need to prove that I'm not what they desperately want to think I am. And it's a trap that so many fall into. And is it fair? Fuck no. Of course, it's completely unfair that trap exists. But that trap exists. And hoping that it doesn't exist so that you can continue playing this game is fool's gold. A few seasons ago, we had, like, an Olympic level swimmer who, like, didn't want to let people know that. And, they booted her for the strength of the tribe, because that's just was like, well, she's over 40 and she's a woman, so she's gonna suck. We won't bother mentioning that she's probably the best athlete on this tribe. You have to do that. You can't let them pigeonhole you, because they will, in part because, like, this first decision is based on so little data.
Yeah, and I mean, if they had known she was from Florida, she'd have an even more crippling mark against her. Like, she would have had a real uphill climb. So bravo to her for getting past that. We also had Missy, got a nice little background sob story thing there. Mm-hmm. Nora flashed some signs of being, let's say, interesting. I remember she had some confessional talking some shit about how she knew she could trust this guy because he reminded her of her ex-boyfriend, which is definitely a thing that a lot of people say.
Sometimes people aren't exes because of things they did. Maybe Nora is the problem. She's like, man, I wish he wasn't my ex.
You know why I know that's not true? Because the self-awareness it would take to figure that out would eliminate her from contention for casting on Survivor. So that can't be it. We also had Big Buff Aaron not allowed to call the shots. That was fun. Like, the biggest, strongest guys usually get deferred to early on, and that definitely didn't happen here. We have, I can't believe I didn't mention this earlier, the pride of Canada, our first ever Canadian, and so appropriately, a hockey player.
Yeah, it was either a hockey player or a Mountie, and if only there had been one that was both, they would have to do all they could to get him. There's some discussion of, like, how Canadian is this guy? He's been living in, the U.S. for decades, which, first off, I'd contend that's a very Canadian trait. Secondly, I mean, he is the first Canadian-born player in the history of Survivor. However, like, I don't think that the new rules opening up to Canadian residents applies to him. I think they could have cast him anytime they wanted to because he's a U.S. resident.
Yeah, but still. Canadian.
Still. Yeah, Canadian hockey player. I'm for it. I mean, I did a minor bit of research because I'm like, hey, which hockey player? I know some NHL players. And then, yeah, he's like a 60-year-old, fitness buff, motivational speaker, podcaster. I'm like, oh, God, this guy's going to be awful. But you know what? He wasn't. He wasn't awful.
No, in fairness, I actually kind of liked him. And I feel like he, especially for, like, the former athlete type, seemed to get along really well, seemed to play the everyman pretty well with the rest of the tribe, so...
Yeah, he wasn't like a ego-driven, hey, this is how we do things type. He was blending to a degree.
Yeah, and especially him being the guy that gave the, like, I'm used to being a captain confessional. Like, that should normally be a huge red flag, but he, in the captain sense, was like, oh, I'm gonna get us to work together as a team, not, I'm gonna call the shots and everybody's gonna follow me, which... Well done, because especially at your age, I don't know that that's going to go over well. So good for him reading the room. I was impressed. Yeah.
I liked Elizabeth. I liked her energy, basically, especially like, when she went to the island, her just fangirling out. I found it charming.
See, I questioned whether she was an actual fan of the show. Because
you don't have to be that big a fan of the show to know Rob and Sandra.
Yeah, I do wonder, did they just show them heroes versus villains before they went out there, maybe? I don't know. But yeah, I agree with you. I enjoyed her, much more so than the last Olympic swimmer that we had. She just seems to have a lot more energy. And, I liked that she had the balls to take the shot at, trying to beat Boston Rob in a fire challenge. It wasn't a wise move, but it was ballsy.
No, we'll talk about that. But yeah. The show's brass, and I liked her energy, and like moreover, and you started to get at this. I liked the women of Laro deciding, hey, you know what? They can only target us as the first boot if we let it happen.
Yes.
We're under no obligation to let that happen, and that was mwah.
Okay, ladies, now let's get in formation. The other thing, Tommy stood out to me, the devious teacher guy. We don't get enough, really assholey, schemy teachers on this show. So it's about time that crowd finally got representation.
Yeah, very underrepresented.
Yes.
So there are a few standouts. I mean, one head and shoulders over the other, which I do not mind. I do not need, mediocrity, or what's the term they use in sports where they pretend everybody has a chance to win, but it's only because everybody's bad at it? Parody.
The Cleveland Cavaliers.
I don't need parity in my, Survivor contestants, some superstars and some players. But what I also noticed and what I appreciated after only one episode, but nobody I disliked. Nobody was like, get off my screen.
Yeah. I mean, it really did feel like the Cleveland Cavaliers to me. I should say previous Cleveland Cavaliers. Like you got Elaine as the LeBron, and then there's other pieces that will not necessarily run the show, but will hopefully, keep it from turning into a blowout while Elaine takes a breather.
Yeah. So, right now I'm feeling good about the season because, as we've said many times, and, we'll say many times later, the most important thing is the cast.
For sure.
What happens, the decisions, the evil production whose only job is to try and make us angry as fans. Silly or not silly gimmicks they have, none of that matters if you have a good cast. And no amazing plans or anything will matter if you have a bad cast. And so far, there's no reason to suspect that we have a cast that will be dragged down by this. We will obviously see from there on. And, the cast itself, besides the fact that everybody seems, all right, and we got to know them a bit, it feels a little different, doesn't it? Like, this is a diverse cast for many different reasons.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I noticed is, like, obviously there are certain archetypes that are always on this show, but even those in this group feel like they have, like, a slight twist to them. Like, the retired athlete is Canadian, military person is a black woman, the southerner is a butch lesbian. Like, there's just little tweaks, and that's really all you need. I mean, we know that there are certain slots that are going to be filled. I mean, the Aaron slot, the gym owner, like, okay, yes, there's always going to be that buff guy, but you can play around the margins with some of these other casting slots, and it seems, again, early returns, small sample size, whatever, but it seems to have turned out pretty well here.
Yeah, and so, we have a racially diverse cast, but also, there's a wider range in ages than we've gotten the past few seasons, and, I think really interestingly, like, body types, to the point where, this is a less thirsty season than we've had in years past, but it could result in, like, a more interesting combination of people.
Yeah, and I think, the youngest was 23?
Yeah.
I mean, we've hammered this point home, like, just leave the teenagers out. So we're good. I mean, 23 is fine. I mean, if that's your youngest person, and I mean, we've got two near 60 players. Is it Janet and Tom?
I believe Tom is 60.
Is he 60? Okay. And I know Janet's very close if she's not already there. So yeah, it's definitely a change from what we've had in recent seasons. And so far, I'm enjoying the change.
Yeah. So one thing to note about that, and I'm sure a lot of, Survivor-type fans that go out of their way to listen to, B-list podcasts probably know this already, but this is the first season that was cast under a new head of casting. So about a year ago, the head of casting, Lynn Spillman, was let go by the show. And I found the reaction to this pretty interesting in that there's nothing Survivor fans love to do more than complain about how bad casting is. No, that's not true. They love to complain about how bad editors are, and then how bad casting is. And then, so, Survivor, let's go with the person that is the head of that, and they're like, how dare they? And it's like, this more than anything underlines that you people cannot be pleased. And obviously, there's a touch to it that, people don't like to see people lose their jobs. And there's also an element of, like, this is the only person in production that we know of that's a woman, a named person. That's not cool. But if you, really are complaining a lot that, Survivor casts have started to get a certain type and certain boring and, why can't they do anything new, then maybe you should understand why a change was made. Now, look, I don't know, which is why I didn't criticize either way. I don't know what job she was doing. I also had a little more sympathy to the difficulty of the job. But, again, incredibly small sample size. But just looking at this, it's like, if you feel like this cast is a lot different than the sort of casts you've seen of late, there might be a reason for that.
Hey, and you know what? I can already say with some degree of confidence, the season 40 cast knocked it out of the park. Well done.
Yeah, they dug deep.
No spoilers, but let's just say it's well done.
All right. So the other thing going on besides a potentially interesting cast is if they had failed in their brand new casting format, they brought in a couple ringers.
They did, and we'd kind of, I think, speculated about this too, is that sort of like Extinction Island was there just to potentially keep around entertaining cast players if none were left in the actual game. That's the role of Sandra and Rob this season. They're the fail-safe, and I think it's nice because the gimmick can work in a lot of different ways. Like, you can tone it back, you can dial it up. It depends. It's very flexible. And if you need more Boston Rob and Sandra, they're there. There's going to be a minimum amount, but it can ebb and flow depending on how the season's going. But I like it. I especially enjoyed the Statler and Waldorf thing, the booth at Tribal Council. Fucking inspired. Loved it. I did also enjoy, and I'm assuming you did too, that they made them explicitly spell out, hey, we're not playing. We will not enter the game. Read it off some sheet hammered to a tree. that I enjoyed.
Yeah, my wife is like, is this really necessary? It's like, oh, honey, you haven't been on the internet.
Yes.
This is so necessary. They needed to zoom in so people could take the screenshots and share it and read it out loud and underline it. They might need to do it again next week. It's like,
yes.
We are not playing. We're not.
Bless your dear wife for not being online.
Oh, God. She, every once in a while, acts embarrassed about it. She doesn't understand anything. I'm like, no, honey. Seriously.
Yes.
It is,
you're living a better life.
Positive sign. Yeah. I envy your unawareness of the cesspools that I willingly submit myself. And by that way, I should say I'm not calling, the Survivor fandom that necessarily. I'm just suggesting the internet as a whole.
Yes.
Look. I'm the last person on earth that's going to complain about Sandra and Rob being put on my television screen. They are two of my favorite players of all time, if not my two very favorite. That's very possible. I mean, obviously one I understand. I have never calculated who my second favorite is, but that works. But I was trepidatious going in the season just because, frankly, anytime they have another island situation, extra camp situation, it often ends up being a detriment to episodes. Not always to every episode, but certainly to some, simply because it's like, I don't want to check in on this other place. I'd rather spend the time where the majority of the game is. Now, at this part of the season, and I'd say every time that they've done this part of the season is fine because it's just basically an opportunity to get to know somebody we didn't know yet, right? That's where we got to know Elizabeth, and to some degree. That said, I mean, it's pretty silly that it's like, hey, we're going to have this feature to show you how awesome Rob is making fire. We get it. We kind of knew that. That wasn't really something I had a lot of questions about.
Next, they'll have him do a puzzle for somebody. Hey, you want to watch me do this tangram? I'm really good at them.
without a doubt, that's going to happen. It's not going to be fire every time. And it's like, as big a fan as I am, it's like, I don't need that, especially because it's like, it's not like it's going to change anybody's mind, right? It won't matter that Rob started fire in like seconds and people like in real life are impressed by it and impressed by him. The fans will still be like, Rob sucks. Took him 4 tries to win. So, I mean, I know this for a fact. I'm not making that up. I read Twitter today. And whereas if you're a fan, again, like, is this changing anything for you? And also just like the presentation of it felt a little stilted, right? When they have to go through the formalized parts of it. So I do think like the segment could get stronger. First off, after they've knocked a few out of the park, they've got some under their belt, but also when it starts to be a little more flexible. Yeah,
I mean, they have to get the kinks out. And I think also, like, next time I want to see Sandra taking the lead. And this just occurred to me, like, what if Sandra's skill is, like, teaching them to artfully use profanity within the tribe to like, really set the tone, get people to like you? I mean, I would just love it if Sandra's entirety of her coaching technique was just like, all right, listen, you got to be a dick, but you got to be a lovable dick. Here's how you do it. It just spells out exactly how to basically be a pain in the ass, but the type that people love. Like, that would be so beautiful.
It would be. I think that's probably unteachable.
Yeah, it won't happen. You either have it or you don't.
I don't even mean, like, of course, they're not going to air a segment on network television on how to effectively cuss out your tribe mates. I mean, like, what Sandra's got, it's so hard to teach because it's just so much.
It's like height. You can't teach height.
Yeah. The Statler and Wardog.
There you go. So close.
Very.
Statler and Wardog.
Wardog. I'm leaving it and I'm moving on. It was hit or miss, right? Like when it was just Sandra's like, oh, I like him, or Rob being like, yeah, Boston. It's like, okay, that cutaway was unnecessary, but it all was worth it when Rob, clearly goads her on because he knows her and is like, were you like that? And just sets her up, and Sandra delivers so perfectly. And that was the highlight of the episode.
It really was. Brilliant setup by Rob. And he knew she was going to knock it down. Like, you could see he was smiling as he delivered it. He's like, all right, here you go. Here's one on a tee. She just cranked that thing.
Yeah, no, it was trademark mischievous Rob and trademark trash-talking Sandra. And it's like, yes, that. If you give me one of those per episode, I'm not going to be complaining.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, really, if you are complaining about that, then you just don't like Boston Rob and Sandra, and what is wrong with you?
Yeah, it's like, we can just have fun. You don't have to hate fun. You're not going to impress anybody by being like, yeah, that thing you guys don't think is fun, I think sucks. That's not as charming and as fun as you think it is. Just apparently enjoy some things that are fun and then move on.
Well, apparently it's a marketing strategy for other CBS shows, because I don't know if you got the commercial.
I did not. I fast forwarded
there was a commercial, at least in the American broadcast, for some other CBS show, and it's like Rob Corddry sitting there talking to these other people, and he's like, oh man, Boston Rob and Sandra, and they're like, Survivor, man, you remember Survivor? They're like, we don't watch Survivor. Survivor heroes versus villains, come on, man. Yeah, we don't watch Survivor. Like, okay, you're really hammering home the point that freaking dorks watch Survivor. I'm currently watching Survivor.
Like, yeah, and clearly it's like, we got to do a Survivor-esque promo so that this can air during Survivor so people can watch our show. It's like, what you got? Man, Survivor sucks.
Yes. How about if we make fun of the show that you're watching right now? That really going to lure you out to our show? Huh?
Yeah. I haven't seen as good a case of, like, reading your audience as since, like, last season when Gavin told a jury full of people who were on the edge of extinction that their experience was stupid and rewarding it would be dumb.
It's so good to have that fight again.
Well, I mean, it's not so much of a fight between you and me.
No, absolutely. We're on the side of justice here. So anyway, Elizabeth was the first one that got sent to the island of the idols and got to bask in the glory that was Rob and Sandra, and of course,
and more importantly, the statues of Rob and Sandra.
That is even more glorious than the actual Rob and Sandra. So she of course fails in her fire making challenge that she got goaded into. First of all, it's kind of predictable that she was going to do that, right? Like, it was pretty obvious that the Olympic level athlete is going to be like, yeah, I can do it. I don't back down from anything. I also don't think it was at all intuitive to try to bargain with Rob in that situation.
No, not at all. No.
Like,
that's the sort of thing, like, if somebody does this, like, oh, this person's good.
So that's what I was just going to say.
The absence of it isn't like, oh, this person's bad.
Yeah. So I'm saying, like, if you had the thought to bargain with Rob in that situation, that's probably a sign that you're really fucking good already and you don't need a lot of coaching.
Yeah, but yeah, going against Ross, like, and like, she just had proof that, like, he can do this quick.
Yes.
You know, it isn't even like, is he as good as we say? Like, how many times have we ever really seen Rob make a fire? You know, there wasn't fire making back then. But no, he's just like, there you go, that's fire. You want to give it up? I'd say it's not always a bad decision. Here's where it would be a good decision. If you're Jacob from Ghost Island, and you get sent to that island, and you know that they're voting you out tonight, and moreover, your vote won't mean anything because it's going to be, like, unanimous, then take the shot. You know, you're going to lose, and, you know, but whatever, take the shot. But otherwise, yeah, your vote is probably more important than an idol that can only last 2 days.
I'm really just amazed that Jacob from Ghost Island got mentioned in a podcast again. In a season he's not in. That's just, wow. I'm blown away.
I had to think about it for a while to get his name. But, you know, I mean, Elizabeth basically told everybody she was on Ghost Island Part 2. So, yeah, maybe that brought it top of mind. Which was the other decision that she made that people were talking about. Because I think, you know, I mean, results only tell us that, like, hey, going up against somebody who's made fire a lot and practically was probably practicing for this segment. When you've done it, like, once or twice with Sandra, not a great decision. Ultimately, I don't know how damaging a decision was. I think she also was right in her read that's like, my vote not gonna matter that much. Somebody's gonna go home and it ain't gonna be me. But, of course, the flip side is that also means you don't need an idol, so who cares, right? But her decision to tell the tribe when she got back what happened and, you know, the lies that she made up. What do you think about that decision?
I mean, it's obviously fraught to some degree because, other people are going to go to the island. You know this for a fact because you drew the name of someone that's going to go to the island. And you can only assume that that person is going to draw a name from your tribe again. So, not great, but at the same time, like, really? I kind of feel like they wouldn't want you to go back to the tribe and be like, hey guys, so we're 2 days in, here's the whole gimmick of the season.
Yeah.
Boston, Rob, and Sandra are right around that curve on this beach and blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like there was probably some sort of pressure exerted to not let the cat out of the bag. At the same time, like, will her lie mean much? Not really. I think she was honest in that she didn't win anything. So the method by which she didn't win anything is not as big of a deal.
Yeah, I'm kind of on that path. Is that I get the argument that there's, you know, like, people are going to find out, you know, you could get caught in a lie. I think people are overselling the damage that that's going to do. You know, there are ways around it. First off, try to be, like, make eye contact or something. Maybe be on the beach when that other person comes out. Now you two have a shared secret, you know. Oh, man, can you believe that? Yeah. Oh, I didn't tell. What do you think? So, you know, first off, in that way, it might not get exposed. It only gets exposed if the next person decides to tell the truth about it, right? Yep. And that person will know that Elizabeth didn't. And maybe they'll be like, well, I can keep it a secret too. And it can be a thing. Moreover, like, by the time that person comes back, this could be, like, about 8 to 9 days in, because we know the next person will be from the other tribe.
Yep.
Probably insulated enough that, like, people won't be like, how dare you not tell us that this insane thing is happening over there. They might be like, oh, okay. I mean, I guess you didn't tell us that. There's plenty I'm not telling you. Like, I don't think it'll be like this. Everybody will suddenly, you know, get angry at her, especially because, like, there's not really that big a deal, like, what she kept out of it.
As I mentioned, you could always say, like, hey, you know, production really didn't want me to mention Boston, Rob, and Sandra. It's a whole secret thing, and people would be like, oh yeah, no, that seems reasonable.
Just like, I wanted to tell you guys, are you kidding me? I wanted to tell people that Boston, Rob, and Sandra were here, but they asked me not to. And so I told you guys the parts that were, you know, important to my alliance to know. There's a chance to win an idol, and I did not do it.
Yep.
So yeah, And like the lie she came up with, some people are like, "Oh, that's not a very good lie." I don't know. I think it's fine. It's like she just told them a thing that has happened in the history of Survivor.
Yeah, it's not like this show doesn't recycle gimmicks.
Yeah. Somebody would have heard, like, if I'm, like, one of her tribe mates waiting there and she said that, like, oh, okay, like, Ghost Island, then I just would have moved on with my existence. Like, I wouldn't have questioned it for a second unless, like, she's telling it in a way that, like, her body language or something tips me off that she's lying. But the thing she said, and, like, yeah. And, like, we've seen this in the past, Survivor, like, people were assuming, like, that there were no idols, like, all the idols were on exile or edge of extinction, or whatever, once they knew the edge of extinction existed, because that's a thing that's happened before. Like, people make assumptions on, present situations based on past evidence. So I thought, what she came up with was fine. I think it would have been fine to tell everybody too, but I don't think, like, it's going to submarine her game if and when the truth comes out.
You know whose game did get submarined in this episode, though?
Somebody who went broke?
Your boy, Ronnie. I don't know.
He's my boy?
I don't know why I just decided he's your boy, but he is.
Oh, damn.
How happy were you that Ronnie went home first?
I mean, like, with him himself, I had no especial problem with. He's a type that I don't mind seeing losing, but it wasn't like, that guy. But I was over the moon because Elaine was one of the other options.
Yes.
So, yeah!
Yeah, I mean...
See you later, Ronnie.
It was Ronnie, Elaine, or Vince. Like, of course I'd pick Ronnie to go home in that scenario. Like, that was... great. That was the primary target for me, and it turned out for them as well. So that was awesome. And I personally enjoyed his goodbye confessional thing where he says he let the whole poker community down. First of all, I'm sure the whole poker community doesn't know who you are. Secondly, everyone that's getting voted out should say they let down like X community. That should be like a go-to line.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in the sense that, like, the poker community was desperate to prove that we're not terrible at Survivor, and we just proved another data point, which I want to talk about in a minute. But yeah, like him, it's like, yeah, no, it was great because also it symbolizes that, the women were like, hey, we don't have to vote out one of our own. And, obviously, by that point, the other option had become Vince. But, Ronnie is certainly somebody who seems to be angling down that path. So let's just get rid of him. I think, he gets voted out because he's the one trying to take charge and be a shot caller. But, like, I even feel like, that while certainly true, and while that makes it, kind of satisfying for him to go instead, I don't even get the impression he was that egregious about it. I mean, we saw him move from Elaine to Vince. Like, he wasn't like, just complete Godfather, this is the way it's got to be. It's just, he wasn't, I think where it went wrong for him is he gave people a vibe.
Yeah. And I think we got that from Elaine in her confessional where Ronnie, the master of reading people, is telling us how he has determined that Elaine needs to be a target. She's dangerous, blah, blah, blah. And immediately Elaine is like, nah, I can smell it with Ronnie. Like, I know what's going on there. And I was like, fist pump. Like, yes, she's got a sense for the game. She can read people, unlike Ronnie. It was good stuff. And I think it was nice, not only that we didn't get the most predictable outcomes. Like, I mean, I think Elaine probably would have been a very predictable first boot. In some other seasons.
Vince wouldn't have been terribly unpredictable.
Exactly. So in that sense, Ronnie was in some degree a bit of a surprise. Like, he's not who you would expect to have seen there.
Yeah, no, and like, again, I don't want to make it clear, I'm not like mourning the loss of Ronnie. I also just don't want to celebrate like, oh my God, they got out this great villain. Nah, he was just a guy. He was one of, at least two that were trying to play the standard issue way. And I'll even say this, I think the results of this episode prove that he wasn't necessarily wrong in his read of Elaine. He was wrong that he was able to fool her. But yeah, I mean, what happens? He gets people like, we should vote out Elaine. Everybody's like, well, I don't want to vote out Elaine. I like Elaine. That was kind of his whole point, right? So in that respect, he was right. I think what Elaine pointed out, what a lot of people is like, well, that's not a first boot vote for a reason. And I think that's a big part of the problem. If you're worried that this person's going to be too likable to vote out, maybe don't make that the first vote. Maybe don't be like, okay, everybody, what we have to do before we've ever established any level of trust or anything like that, we have to get rid of the person you are really starting to like.
Yeah, I mean, that was an excellent defense of your boy Ronnie.
Yeah, there you go.
But, you don't expend all of your social capital on the first vote of the game. The whole idea is to take the path of least resistance to the first vote of the game. And Elaine is not that path. I mean, she's clearly got some bonds already. Don't fuck with that. Find the person that doesn't seem to have bonds and gently nudge the vote that direction. If you get any pushback, be like, actually, you guys call a shot. It's fine. I'm going to vote with you. Another
mistake, I believe it was him or Aaron. I don't really, in those early conversations, who was saying what, was being all like, okay, us 7 here, it's got to be that. Because now suddenly, you narrowed it down to 3, and it's not going to be the big hulk of a man while you're still building a shelter. So then it was, Elaine and Vince. Vince would have been the probably easier choice. But if you hadn't been like us 7, then maybe you could have picked somebody else off as well. And then, some people could say, well, he shouldn't have, been the one, making a target, calling shots. That's the overconfidence. And I mean, I'm not going to say that guy wasn't overconfident. But at the same time, you saw it, in the conversation with, Karishma. They were asking her who she wanted, and she was demurring, right? Which, a lot of people are like, that's what you have to do. But, at some point, somebody's got to say something.
Right.
And, usually it's the type that, like Ronnie, like Aaron, that says it and gets their way. Well, what was great this time is they said it and they didn't get their way. So, that really contributed to both a good episode and a positive feeling we have going into the season. But Ronnie continues the amazing streak of the poker players who are really going to do good at this game because of their ability to win. And, Emma pointed this out, but Jean Robert is still the most successful poker pro to ever play this show. Why aren't they better at this?
I think it's probably the same reason that cops aren't better at this. Just because everything is situational. Also, probably because not everybody who has a job is good at that job. I think most people are probably fairly mediocre at their jobs. Maybe it could be that poker players would be great on Survivor, but he's not very good at that. He doesn't have the applicable skills, and he's not great. So, I mean, I don't think your job necessarily is going to make you a better or worse survivor. Having said that, I feel like when Denise won Philippines, we were like, well, obviously, I mean, she's a therapist. Of course she can make social bonds and talk to people and make them feel comfortable. So, this might be me talking out of my ass, which so rarely happens.
And obviously, the construction worker, Tony, is going to do well. That sort of thing.
Obviously.
Here's the thing, though. It's poker players, even if we accept the premise that they, each and every one of them has ever put forth when being on the show, that my skills at poker will let me, read people really well and, figure out the angles and understand blah, blah, blah. It's I don't know how applicable that is to Survivor, because more important than those things, even if you have these bang-on reads and know exactly what's going down, if people don't like you, you can't do anything about it. In poker, that's not part of the equation. Ultimately, if your cards are better than the other person's cards, or if you are able to convince them that you have better cards and thus they fold, they don't need to like you in that transaction. It doesn't matter, right? There is a different success measure. In poker, you can't get around, all the people would be like, yeah, we just want to get rid of that guy, and the only way you could stay is if you have a royal flush or something. Your likability, it doesn't matter to succeed in that game. And this is some stereotyping or whatever, but do poker players strike you as the most likable people on earth?
Yeah, I feel like even pop cultural representations of poker players, not super strong in terms of lack of sleaziness.
Yeah.
I mean, feel like the general perception of them is not the most upstanding individuals.
Yeah, and like modern poker has even changed more because it's become less even about personality, and you know those personalities were often brash and like subhuman, but now it's like all about math and like people just trying to sit still and calculate stuff. So like it's a bunch of like shut-ins or aggressive jerks batting around, and obviously I'm completely stereotyping, but it's based on a personal choice rather than who you are. But, in poker, like, just if you, like, are a major poker player or something listening, how many people have you played poker with that you wish you could have gotten rid of or voted out, right? Like, I don't know if, like, it's personality-wise. Like, so even if you accept the premise that, like, this gives me a really good understanding of, like, acceptable risk and reading people and all of that, and even if you concede that this person is actually good at those things they say they're good at, it doesn't matter if no one likes you, bro.
Indeed. And we have evidence that at least 7 people didn't like him. Well, assuming
or like him as much as other people.
There we go.
Were voting.
Yes, I should clarify. All right, let's move on. Speaking of men who maybe rubbed people the wrong way, perhaps literally, Handsy Dan got a whole segment where we were focusing on how he was making some of the women feel uncomfortable. How'd you feel about that one?
I thought it was a really interesting segment. Now, one thing I'd note is this is the sort of segment that would probably be better discussed by people who have personal knowledge of the situation. However, we didn't want to invite anybody else on.
Oh, no, I'm a totally handsy, inappropriate person, so this is the perfect
there you go.
area.
Well, it's the other perspective I might be more interested in. But it's that I also always feel weird. It's like, hey, we only want you on to be the representative of your people, like, whatever that subgroup is, rather than, we care about your opinions of these other things. So it's always like this touch or go. But even just there, like, just watching it and understanding, it's like, this is what a lot of women deal with and a lot of what they're talking about. It's like, it's not even necessarily that Dan is or isn't a bad guy. It's like, this is the privilege that men feel like that their space and their, way of, interacting physically with people takes priority over the way other people feel. And you saw that. And moreover, you got to see the other half where initially, like, the women talking about it kept like couching their language, right? Like, maybe Kellee is a germaphobe. Maybe she isn't, but she felt like, that was the way she had to talk about this because she didn't want to talk about something uncomfortable in a confessional or to, accuse Dan of something. But like, dude was making her feel uncomfortable by doing inappropriate things. It's not even like, horribly inappropriate things, but like, keep your hands to yourself. It's a pretty good rule of thumb, I
love the way they handled all of that. Like, how that was edited together was beautiful. Like, the fact that we got to see the conversations the women were having about how to, like, debating how to handle the situation and how they felt and blah, blah, blah. Perfect. Like, people need to see that. Specifically men.
It's like, it's not even like cut and dry villain. And maybe like Dan is like a villain and he takes it farther and other things. Like, we don't know. Like, we don't even need to know that from what we saw. It was a man just being, casual with his, physicalness and clearly having no idea that, like, that's not always cool. That's not what somebody wants. Like, there are boundaries for a reason because you can make people uncomfortable, and he is oblivious to that completely. What I really loved and what underlines why I really like Janet, I'm sorry, I completely interrupted, and that's weird that I'm apologizing.
Yeah, right.
I like that when they were talking to Janet, she took their concerns seriously and provided, like, good counsel. It wasn't like, oh, well, let's just not worry about that. Or no, Dan didn't mean anything that. He's a good guy. He, like, listened to their concerns, and then you saw it with both women, both Kellee and Molly. Once Janet was, like, taking it seriously, they were now, like, opening up, and now they weren't using the same language, like, oh, maybe it's me or anything. They were like, yeah, no, we don't have to take this. And yeah, I just thought it was a brilliant thing to see, and I hope more people, like, really saw it.
Yeah, and the Janet thing matters too because, women, not to generalize, but older women aren't necessarily always going to be the person who will back you up and be like, yeah, we got to confront this and get it out in the open. she could have just as easily been like, oh, girls, that's calm down. That's just how men are. But no, hell yeah, Janet, stand up, say what's right. And then we got to see them confronting Dan, #feminism. I loved it.
Yeah, and I think that's 100% because of the support that Janet, gave her, She backed them up, and then suddenly Kelly's like, yeah, okay, I can do something about that, and I can talk, and I have a voice.
Yep.
And, obviously this is, representative of the things that happen, all the time in the real world, but, especially in this game, where, there's a real fear that, if I step up for any reason, I could get removed. And right there, that's why women don't do it in the workplace or something like that. So no, I applaud the show for showing it.
Yeah. And I wonder, because we've talked a lot in the podcast before about how the dynamics of this game sort of set up some socially terrible situations and conform to certain things in society that suck. Had it been an episode or two later and maybe the women are down numbers, could they feel comfortable in doing that? I don't know. I think it worked out really well that this got resolved in a way it should have. And people got to see hey, look, this is how adults can handle this situation. This is how you fix things. This is how you should ask for permission and consent and discuss these things. And no one should get all pissed off about it because it's fine.
Well, I mean, and obviously, if you're an aggrieved party, you can get somewhat pissed off.
No, I'm sorry. I'm saying no one should get pissed off for being confronted about, in Dan's situation. I should have clarified that. Yes, Dan should not be getting pissed off. I wanted to clarify that for you. Yes, thank you, because otherwise I was going to get some angry emails.
As we should. And I liked how, independently, Kellee and Molly were both saying similar things. It wasn't even just and it confirms, this is a real thing. And yeah, and again, I'm a man. I don't necessarily have that perspective, so it's good to be presented with it. Obviously the thing I try to do is listen.
Sure.
But
not in the podcast, but
no.
In other situations.
Honestly, you'd be amazed how different I am in RRL than here. Most people who know me are like, that guy doesn't talk a lot.
You know what it sort of reminded me of is back in Game Changers, which we hate to ever discuss, but the Surriiiiiiiivoooooor and Michaela scene where it's you got a glimpse behind the curtain. It was that kind of feel again, and I loved it. I love that kind of stuff on the show. Yeah,
and it's just it was just this perfect thing of what support can look like and what that can do for people.
Allies, both real life and in the show.
Yeah. All right. I think that's most of what we wanted to cover for this episode, yeah?
Sure, let's do some ridiculousness.
Yeah, so every season we like to come up with some kind of new gimmick for the podcast, much like the show itself. We can't just leave well enough alone, we gotta just keep tinkering and changing. This season, much like the people who visit Rob and Sandra, we are going to offer our wisdom to anyone who needs it, any of our listeners out there. So what you can do is ask the podcast for advice about anything, whether it be Survivor related, whether it be related to something that happened on the episode, whether it be, podcast related or, things that that are in our field of expertise based on, things we've said, or things that may be way out of our area of expertise. And frankly, I want to say especially things that might be out of our expertise. So what we need, obviously, this is a two-way street. You need to ask us for advice. And you can submit your questions via DM on Twitter, or you can email us at purrrrrplepodcast@gmail.com. We will not broadcast your name. Obviously, if you're connecting with us on those two formats, we will know it, but we will not tell people your name, especially if playing along in the spirit of it, you give an advice column type sign off. So, we put that out, yesterday, and we did get a few responses.
All right, hit me with one.
All right, here we go. Dear PRP, I just started dating someone, and I'm ready to share my darkest secret with them. Ooh,
sexy.
That I still watch Survivor. So clearly they might be one of the characters on that TV show. They've never watched Survivor before, so I want to take a chance and introduce them to it so we can watch together. What season should I start them on?
You want to go first on this one?
No, I'll let you because I just talked all
Well, that's just your trademark thing. Okay, I will say you should do Nicaragua because if you can suffer through that, your relationship can withstand anything. Like if someone can tolerate 13 episodes of Survivor Nicaragua, they can suffer through a relationship with you, anonymous stranger, and they will never face a more daunting challenge.
See, I think another potential outcome of that is not so much a test of their will and their mettle and what kind of strong. If they like that season, red flag.
Yes, that's when you know it's over. See, that works on a lot of levels. Like it's Nicaragua. Go with Nicaragua.
Yeah. I'll say I'll try to answer somewhat seriously. I don't know why. I think you want a modernish season. First off, it has to be HD, but frankly, that's like half of them at this point, or maybe a third. I don't know. Because watching things that aren't in HD is like watching like butter. It's so hard, right? I remember when I got HD, and it was like this
butter, but
it was like smeared on the TV. I guess is what I was going for. I don't generally watch butter, I guess. What the hell did I say that? When I first got HD, I sometimes just watch things because, oh my god, look at this. And now it's just like, that's television. Anything else is broken.
That must be why the butter channel eventually went away.
I know, it was so amazing back then. And you'd think maybe it would make a comeback in the era of legal weed. So I think, unlike Drawn, I'd say start with something really good. And I think some people are like, no, I don't want to start with the best because, we want to work their way up to it. No. You're not trying like the long game here. You need to sell them right away. Now, I understand maybe you want to avoid like a returnee heavy season because sure, that can be something that would be best enjoyed after you have some experience with the people that are returning. But otherwise, go for something really good. Like, don't be like the Justice League movie and starting like our villain is going to be, Steppenwolf, I think the guy's name was.
Band?
Like, no, you need to go with your heavy hitters. So I think like Kagian would be a really good choice. If you're like, the one worry there is like introducing somebody as Tony at their first time. They might never be able to, reach that high again. But, it's not like most people's like third or fourth hit of crystal meth is their best one. Like, start them off heavy.
Speak for yourself, by the way.
It's usually the first one, and every time you're chasing the high. So, music tells me.
Sure.
Did I get away with that one? Jokes about crystal meth are never not funny. I mean, it's not like it's so horribly destructive or anything. Otherwise, Philippines, I think. So those would be my choices. So you got two options, the reader here. You could either go John's advice, most horrible season ever as a test of your budding love, or or you go mine as a way of actually getting this person to enjoy this thing with you, and then
it's a good indication of what it would be like to date me. That's what you're in for.
All right, you want to read the next one?
Sure. I've got one that says, I'm thinking of starting up a podcast, and I was wondering if you had any advice. Signed, your future competition.
So my first piece of advice is, don't. Why? Why would you do that? I mean, it's horrible. It's a horrible idea. And not because I'm afraid of the competition. You can have it. Just podcasting, just an incredible waste of time.
Yeah, I would say you should just go ahead. I mean, before you even start, just hire an accountant and get a new bank, because you are going to have to figure out what to do with all that sweet, sweet mattress money that you're going to make. And that's the priority. Everything else around that, you'll figure it out later.
No, to be serious, because obviously I'm somebody who has two podcasts that have no reason for existing. We just posted a podcast on my other one earlier this week. You should go check it out. But don't expect to be making any money. It is not a lucrative pastime. Now, obviously, there are people out there that make money podcasting. I would suggest that they fall under one of two groups. One being they are also a media company with all of the infrastructure to provide them with, say, immediate advertising, recording costs, all of that, promotional abilities, or they got in early. And it's kind of like what the blog used to be, right? There used to be, some blogs that like hit really big, and like the writers of them got attention and maybe like real media jobs, most of which have disappeared since then. We're not in that phase anymore of podcasting. It's now, big business or, established amateurs. So if you're going to do it, don't be doing it with dollar signs in your eyes. More, in fact, if you have them in your eyes, it's for the money that it will cost you.
Yeah.
This hobby will cost you money.
Can confirm.
Yeah. So, and from there, like, far be it from me to say to somebody, hey, it's ridiculous to think that somebody needs to hear your thoughts because, wow, look, that could be fun. I am a 40-year-old white guy, so clearly the only way I can have conversations with people who, if you squint closely, resemble friends is if I record it and force people to listen to it. So sure, you can do it for there, but yeah, it's going to cost you money if it has any level of success. We found out that really quickly, that the free stuff goes away really fast once anybody starts listening.
It really does.
And the other thing is, like, you have to be prepared for the time involved. To put out this level of amateurish podcast, we're still spending hours on it.
I mean, ish.
I'd say at least, well, for one, we've been talking already for more than an hour. We had to do some prep before, and then we will do things to get it ready before. So it's hours. And, if you're going to have any level of success, you need to maintain some kind of schedule. So if you're ready for those things, then, I guess just do it. If people want technical details, I suppose ask again. But that'd be my advice. Or if John...
Yeah, I would say, like, just from personal experience, I would say, just go ahead and start and do it. Do it for several years and then get a theme song. Just pay for it and use it to make fun of yourself and most importantly, your fellow podcasters who are giving up their time, their free time for zero pay. That's the goal. That's the mountaintop you need to aim for.
Yeah, once you have that, you've got it made.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, let's do one more. And again, we did get some other ones. We might get to them in the future. Anybody else has some, submit them the way we've said. Dear John and Andy, I was once the victim of an international scandal. My honor and integrity was taken advantage of, and I was made to look like a fool in front of my favorite online community, as well as the distinguished actor and American icon Todd Bridges.
Wow.
A simple quiz happened to be rigged, and the results brought mountains of shame upon both myself and the actor himself, who has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Probably, he should at least. My problem is that one of the perpetrators is the host of my favorite Survivor podcast, and if he gets fired for dishonesty, the show will only be about 10 minutes long. The other guy is dull. What should I do? Signed, please, asking like some, yes?
Okay, first of all, bravo. Secondly, did this person have a stroke when coming up with that sign-off? Because, I know you try to spell out things with your sign-off, but that was quite the word salad. I do resent the implication that we would ever rig a quiz merely to troll our beloved audience. How dare you, sir? Fuck that guy.
Actually, there was also another sign-off. Please avoid loose stray yappers. So do with that what you will. I would say, listener, whoever you may be, that the consequences of this action need not be borne by you. I think it's admirable that you are worried about what will happen to this other person, but like you've already suffered enough. You didn't create the situation. If this situation is indeed true, it's hard for me to tell what happened, but like it's not up to you to worry about the consequences for somebody else's malfeasance. So if someone did what you were suggesting that they did, if somebody did you wrong, and more importantly, did Todd Bridges wrong, like you were suggesting they did, then like it's up to them to deal with the consequences. So I say you tell, whoever needs to know, you go to his higher ups if you need to. And you know what? Fuck Stephen Fishback. He really shouldn't have done that.
He's the lesser Josh Wigler, that guy.
So that'd be my voice. It's like you don't need to let this rest. You never need to let this rest. You should get justice.
I love how incredibly inside jokey that question got. So perfect for our podcast. That amused like 4 people.
That's all we need.
That's it.
And I think
it's 3 more than we usually care about.
That's right. I feel like it gives people a good idea of what level of advice they need to ask for.
Yes.
All right, so that's enough for that segment for today. Let's do predictions. What's going to happen next week? Who's going home?
Yeah, I was kind of shocked. Like, I was looking at the lists of the tribes because I need to do that this early on in the season. And I feel like I'm going to go bold this week. Like, I'm going to say if Orange loses, they send home Aaron. And if Purple loses, they send home Dan. And I can't believe I'm picking two men for the second boot. Like, this season might have gotten me too optimistic.
Yeah, that sounds like bold optimism, but hey, I prefer that than preemptive cynicism, which is obviously another way of going about it. In fact, I was so opposed to that we just avoided doing week one predictions, which would have been nothing but preemptive cynicism. Yep. For myself, yeah, obviously in Laro, that's the Orange Tribe, and I know that because I'm reading it off the screen right now. Aaron seems to be the odd man out, losing Ronnie, and the preview showing that he doesn't seem to take it in stride necessarily. But I'm just not sure a tribe loses two in a row and it's like, okay, we'll get rid of our most obviously physically strong guy. Right. Especially because like the last challenge had a major physical component to it. And in fact, you could argue that might have been what cost them even in the puzzle aspect. It's just figuring out the puzzle and lifting the pieces might have just wiped them out. And I'm also not sure like what the voting block that we got was like the true alliance, right, or if it was more, like the women being like, no, we don't have to do this. How about we just get rid of Ronnie? So if they lose again, I could see like kind of the middle deciding to like reconstitute something else and deciding we need to do something for tribe strength, yada yada, or just what will work better for, me, Elizabeth, or me, Chelsea, me, Dean, going forward. And I'll say that they'll get rid of Vince.
Oh, okay.
And then for Vokai, Purple, Jason was the one on the outs this episode because he was the one that got caught looking for an idol. I gotta say, I always doubt the veracity of, like, was Jason truly the guy out there all the time, or is he the one that they noticed when they looked up? And if they would have looked up, like, half an hour later, it'd be like, hey, where's Tommy or something? But, I don't buy that he'll be the next boot. I'm old enough to remember when, like, Nick was going to be the first boot of a season. I think sometimes when you survive that, somebody else will come along to annoy people. And the preview seems to be like Nora heavy in a way that suggests that she might be a little extra. And that often spells doom. So I'm going to go with her.
Okay. Let's do some quick plugs here. First of all, thanks to the woman that I mentioned up front at the top of the podcast, our theme song creator. It's at Abigail Klein Music on Instagram. Reach out to her at the very least. Tell her theme song is awesome and you can't wait to listen to it. I don't know why you need to do that. She already got money, which is really the thing she should care about. Yay, capitalism.
Artists sometimes like it when you appreciate their work.
It's true. Thanks to Kemper Boyd and Assistant Dragon Slayer for covering Survivor Australia, South Africa, all the non-American survivors that we don't watch, but we are very happy to provide a platform for you guys to discuss. And also Barbara Anderson and Blurry Denzel labored through a South Pacific rewatch this summer.
Hey, that was their decision, not ours.
I want to say that was not forced upon them. They willingly chose that. So thank you, I guess. Anything else?
Follow the show. Our website is purplerockpodcast.com. You can follow the show on Twitter at purplerockpod. You can follow me on Twitter at purplerockandy.
Hey, if you want to DM me on Twitter, I'm at purplerockjohn.
You can subscribe to the show on, all the various podcast ways, also on YouTube. This season, we will endeavor to do, posts on YouTube every week. They will not always be video posts, and in fact, for this season, there will not be live stream video posts because YouTube got rid of the function that we used to do that. There are other software that could allow us to do that, but for like the dozen of people who watch us live, it's probably not worth the effort. But we might record video and post that on the YouTube channel. So yeah, that's another format where you can get this podcast. Subscribe and like. We need those likes for the non-advertising that we do. And, that's about it. How about we, hit some music?
Yeah, we can't say hit the theme song because, we already did that.
We have one now.
Yeah. So hit the music.